There is a shadow fact hanging over the maple leaf that no politician or bank CEO will dare utter in a televised interview. While we are told our banking system is the safest in the world, the reality is that Canada's household debt to GDP ratio is now the highest in the G7. We aren't just living on borrowed time, we are living on borrowed money that doesn't actually exist. Imagine a house built on a foundation of frozen slush. It looks solid during the winter of low interest rates, but the spring thaw is coming, and the global sun is getting hotter. Every time you tap your card at a terminal, a tiny piece of the Canadian dream chips away. We've been conditioned to believe that stability is our birthright, yet the average Canadian is now only $200 away from insolvency at the end of the month. This isn't just a financial statistic, it's a psychological prison. The shadow fact is this: Canada's economy is no longer based on productivity or innovation, but on the desperate appreciation of shelter. We have traded our future for 800-square-foot glass boxes in the sky. But what happens when the global floor drops? Stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll see the open loop that connects your grocery bill to a conflict halfway across the world. Walk down the aisle of your local Loblaws or Sobeys and you'll feel it, that visceral, tightening sensation in your chest. It's not just the price of a bag of milk or a carton of eggs. It's the realization that your labor is being devalued in real time. We are living through a period of greedflation, where the corporate giants of the North are posting record profits, while you're debating whether you can afford the good butter. This is the first trigger of the emotional pain, the feeling of being hunted in your own neighborhood. You work 40, 50, even 60 hours a week, yet the grocery cart looks emptier every Saturday. The dark psychology at play here is learned helplessness. When the cost of basic survival exceeds the growth of your stagnant Canadian salary, your brain begins to shut down its long-term planning centers. You stop thinking about a vacation to Banff or saving for a down payment, and you start thinking about survival. But the pain isn't accidental. It's a symptom of a much larger global crisis that is beginning to leak into our borders, threatening to turn our peaceable kingdom into a landscape of scarcity. Why is the most resource-rich nation on Earth making its citizens feel like they're living in a famine? The answer lies in a global web we weren't supposed to notice. The GTA and GVA have become the epicenters of a housing nightmare that has transcended simple economics and entered the realm of psychological warfare. For the average young professional in Canada, the dream of homeownership has been replaced by a life sentence of rental serfdom. You are paying off someone else's mortgage, while yours remains a mathematical impossibility. This is where the never getting ahead feeling becomes a physical weight. You see the BOC interest rates climb, and you're told it's to tame inflation, but all you feel is the squeeze as your landlord passes the cost directly to you. The middle class is disappearing into the gap between the haves, who bought in 2010, and the never-wills, who were born a decade too late. We are witnessing the death of social mobility in real time. In the shadows of the skyscrapers, there's a quiet desperation. A generation of Canadians who did everything right, got the degrees, took the jobs, and yet find themselves living with 3 roommates at age 35. This is the visceral reality of the Canadian housing bubble. It isn't just about real estate, it's about the theft of time. Every hour you work is being sucked into a vortex of interest and land transfer taxes. But there is a secret loop here. The housing market is the only thing keeping the Canadian dollar from a total collapse. If the bubble bursts, the currency goes with it. The CRA tax bite is the silent predator of the Canadian worker. You get your paycheck, you look at the gross amount, and then you see the carnage. After federal tax, provincial tax, CPP, and EI, you're left with a fraction of your effort. In Canada, we are taxed on what we earn, what we spend, what we own, and even what we leave behind. The psychological impact is a sense of diminishing returns on effort. Why push for that promotion if 40% of the raise goes straight to a government that can't seem to fix the healthcare wait times or the crumbling infrastructure? This creates a brain drain where our best and brightest look south, realizing that their Canadian loyalty is being rewarded with a lower standard of living. We are being sold a social contract that is being rewritten in the fine print. The emotional pain of seeing your hard-earned money vanish into a bureaucratic black hole is compounded when you see the waste in Ottawa. We are the only nation that punishes success while simultaneously making it impossible to survive on a median income. This leads us to the next shadow fact. The TFSA and RRSP systems designed to help us are actually being used as psychological anchors to keep us invested in a system that is rigged against the individual. Are you really saving, or are you just providing liquidity for the banks to gamble with? Imagine a world where the global supply chain doesn't just stutter, it snaps. Canada, for all its vastness, is an island of consumption in a sea of global volatility. We import our clothes, our tech, and a shocking amount of our food. When a global crisis, be it conflict in Eastern Europe or a blockade in the South China Sea, hits, Canada is the first to feel the chill. We are a branch plant economy. Our destiny is tied to the whims of empires. This scene is about the vulnerability of the Canadian supply line. The emotional pain here is the fear of the empty shelf, a concept Canadians haven't had to face since the Great Depression. But the signs are there. The out-of-stock signs at the hardware store, the 6-month wait for a vehicle, the skyrocketing cost of imported produce. We are realizing that our first world status is a fragile veneer. The dark psychology of this is anticipatory anxiety. We know something is wrong. We can feel the gears of the world grinding, but we are told to keep spending, to keep borrowing, to keep the machine moving. But the machine is thirsty, and it's running on the last of our collective resilience. What happens when the world stops sending us what we need, and we realize we've forgotten how to make it ourselves? The Bank of Canada is often portrayed as a steady hand on the tiller, but to the average homeowner, they are the architects of a silent massacre. Every quarter-point hike is a dagger to the heart of a family's disposable income. We were told interest rates would be low for a long time, a psychological assurance that led millions into variable rate traps. Now, those families are facing negative amortization, a fancy financial term for a nightmare where your mortgage payment doesn't even cover the interest. You are paying more to own less. This is the visceral feeling of drowning in shallow water. You can see the surface, you can see the life you used to have, but the weight of the debt is pulling you down. The BOC isn't just fighting inflation. They are rebalancing the economy on the backs of the middle class. They are trying to cool a market that they overheated with cheap credit for a decade. The irony is bitter. The very people who followed the rules and bought a home are the ones being sacrificed to save the currency. This creates an open loop of distrust. If the experts were so wrong about transitory inflation, what else are they wrong about? And more importantly, what are they hiding about the true state of our gold reserves and the strength of the loonie? Let's talk about the TFSA trap. We are told to save, to be diligent, to put our money into these tax-free vehicles. But in a high inflation environment, a TFSA holding CAD is a melting ice cube. If inflation is at 6% and your safe investment is making 4%, you are losing 2% of your purchasing power every year while feeling like a responsible saver. This is the dark psychology of the money illusion. You see the numbers in your account stay the same or go up slightly, so you feel secure. But when you take that money to the real world, it buys half of what it used to. The CRA is lurking too, ready to pounce if you make too much or trade too frequently in your TFSA. It's a freedom account with a leash. The emotional pain comes when you realize that even your savings are a target. We are being squeezed from both ends. The cost of living is a ceiling that's lowering, and the value of our savings is a floor that's sinking. The middle class is being crushed in the middle of this hydraulic press. Why is the system designed to punish the cautious and reward the reckless? Because a nation of savers is harder to control than a nation of debtors. Debt makes you compliant. Debt makes you work that job you hate because the alternative is the street. Is your TFSA a shield or just a prettier cage? The brain drain is no longer just a headline, it's a dinner table conversation. Every week, another talented nurse, engineer, or tech worker packs their bags for Texas, Florida, or Arizona. They aren't leaving because they don't love Canada. They're leaving because they can no longer afford to live here. This is the visceral pain of a nation losing its future. When the best and brightest leave, the tax base shrinks, the healthcare system weakens, and the burden on those who stay becomes even heavier. We are witnessing a hollowing out of the Canadian intellect. The dark psychology here is the sunk cost fallacy. Many stay because they've invested their lives here, but the younger generation sees the writing on the wall. They see that a salary in USD goes twice as far, and the houses cost half as much. Canada is becoming a training ground for the United States. We pay for the education and the healthcare of our youth, only for them to export their productivity to our southern neighbor. This creates a terrifying open loop. If we keep losing the people who solve problems, who will be left to fix the crisis? The middle class isn't just disappearing financially, it's physically moving across the border. What remains is a society of the very rich and the struggling service class. Are you the next to leave, or the one left to pay the bill? The oil and gas industry is Canada's golden goose, but it's a goose that the world and our own government keeps trying to cook. We sit on the third largest oil reserves on the planet, yet we have some of the highest fuel prices in North America. The psychological disconnect is staggering. We are told we must be green and sustainable, while we import oil from regimes with zero environmental standards. This irony is a source of immense emotional pain for the workers in Alberta and Saskatchewan, who feel like outcasts in their own country. A global crisis that disrupts energy flow should, in theory, make Canada a superpower. Instead, our lack of pipelines and our regulatory red tape leave us stranded. We are the wealthy man starving to death because he can't find his keys. This vulnerability is a shadow fact that could push Canada down during a global collapse. If we can't get our resources to market, our dollar loses its only real backing. We become a service economy with nothing to serve. The Dutch disease is real, but the Canadian disease is worse. We have the resources, but we've lost the will to use them. When the global lights go out, will Canada be left in the dark because we were too afraid to turn on our own switch? Rental serfdom is the new Canadian reality. In cities like Toronto, Vancouver, and even once affordable places like Halifax, the rent trap has snapped shut. You pay 50% or more of your income just to have a roof over your head. This isn't just an expense, it's an extraction. It's the transfer of wealth from the young and working to the landed gentry and corporate REITs. The emotional pain is the lack of agency. You can't paint the walls, you can't get a dog, and you live in constant fear of a rent eviction or an N12 form. The dark psychology of renting in Canada is the feeling of transience. You never truly belong. You are a guest in your own life. This instability prevents families from starting, prevents communities from forming, and turns our cities into collections of strangers. The curiosity gap here is who actually owns your building. Often, it's a numbered company or a pension fund that is betting against your ability to ever own a home. We are building a society of permanent transients. If a global crisis hits and unemployment spikes, these renters have no equity to fall back on. They are one missed paycheck away from the sidewalk. This is the hidden fragility of the Canadian social fabric. The middle class is being replaced by a class of perpetual debtors who own nothing and are told to be happy about it. Shrinkflation is the ultimate psychological gaslighting. You buy the same box of cereal, pay more for it, and yet the bag inside is noticeably smaller. The shadow fact here is that official inflation numbers often ignore this reality. The government tells you inflation is 3%, but your lived experience at the checkout counter says it's 20%. This creates a cognitive dissonance that erodes trust in all institutions. You feel like you're losing your mind. You're working harder, but your lifestyle is shrinking like the products you buy. This is the visceral pain of death by 1,000 cuts. It's the granola bar that's now 20% air. It's the family-size portion that barely feeds two. This is a dark psychology tactic used by corporations to hide the true erosion of our currency's value. We are being conditioned to accept less for more. In a global crisis, this trend accelerates into skimpflation, where the quality of services and goods drops off a cliff. Think of the disappearing customer service, the longer wait times, the self-checkout where you do the work for the company for free. Canada is leading the way in this decline. We are becoming a high-cost, low-service nation. The middle class is being trained to expect mediocrity while paying for luxury. But what happens when there's nothing left to shrink, when the box is finally empty? The snow washing phenomenon is one of Canada's darkest secrets. Billions of dollars in illicit money flow through our real estate market every year, laundered through the Big Five banks and shell companies. This dirty money inflates house prices far beyond what local salaries can support. While you struggle to save for a deposit, a criminal syndicate or a corrupt foreign official is outbidding you with cash they need to hide. This is the emotional pain of a rigged game. You aren't just competing with your neighbor, you're competing with the world's underground economy. The government's blind eye to this issue is a shadow fact that explains why the housing market never seems to correct. It's not just supply and demand, it's supply and laundering. The dark psychology at play is the erosion of the rule of law. When citizens see that the rules apply to them but not to the wealthy or the corrupt, they stop believing in the system. The middle class is being priced out by the very criminals the system is supposed to protect us from. If a global crisis triggers a crackdown on international money laundering, the Canadian housing market would lose its artificial support. The safe haven would become a sinkhole. Are you living in a neighborhood or a giant outdoor laundromat? The big five banks are the pillars of the Canadian identity, but they are also the gatekeepers of our misery. We pay some of the highest banking fees in the world for the privilege of letting them use our money. The psychological trick is the illusion of safety. We are told our banks are too big to fail, which actually means they are too big to care. When interest rates rise, they are quick to hike the rates on your debt, but slow to increase the interest on your savings. This spread is where your wealth goes to die. The visceral pain is the service fee that appears on your statement every month, a small reminder that you don't even own the right to access your own funds for free. This is the dark psychology of institutional capture. The banks, the regulators, and the government are all in the same boat, and you are the one rowing it. In a global crisis, these banks will be protected at all costs, likely through bail-ins, where your deposits could be converted into bank equity to save the institution. This is a shadow fact that most Canadians haven't even heard of. Your safe deposit might not be as liquid as you think when the system starts to shudder. Are you a customer, or are you the ultimate collateral for a failing financial architecture? The rural-urban divide in Canada is becoming a canyon of resentment. While the urban elite in Toronto and Ottawa drive policy, the hinterlands that actually produce the resources are being squeezed by carbon taxes and regulatory burdens. This is the visceral pain of geographic alienation. If you live in a rural community, you need your truck. You need to heat your home with oil or gas. To you, the green transition feels like an attack on your very existence. The dark psychology here is identity polarization. We are being turned against each other, city versus country, while the overall economy slides. This division makes Canada vulnerable to a global crisis. A nation divided cannot respond effectively to external shocks. When the global price of wheat or potash or timber fluctuates, the rural communities feel it first, but the urban centers, insulated by their service sector bubbles, don't notice until it's too late. The shadow fact is that the urban wealth in Canada is entirely dependent on the rural resources they are currently taxing into oblivion. It is a parasitic relationship that is reaching its breaking point. When the parasite kills the host, everyone dies. Are we one Canada, or two different worlds destined to collide as the resources run thin? The immigration housing mismatch is a topic most are afraid to discuss for fear of being mislabeled, but the math is cold and unforgiving. Canada is bringing in record numbers of new residents without a plan for where they will sleep, where they will go to the doctor, or how the infrastructure will handle them. This is the emotional pain of overcrowding. It's the 3-hour wait at the ER, the packed subway cars, and the bidding wars for a basement apartment. The dark psychology at play is scapegoating. Instead of blaming the policymakers who failed to build, the frustration is often misdirected at the newcomers themselves, who are also victims of the same high costs and broken promises. This creates a tinderbox of social tension. The shadow fact is that the government uses high immigration as a GDP hack. It makes the economy look like it's growing on paper, even while the GDP per capita, your individual share of the pie, is actually shrinking. You are getting a smaller slice of a slightly larger pie every year. We are importing people to support a housing bubble that is pricing those very people out of a future. It's a circular logic that is bound to fail when the global economy slows down. Can we continue to grow the population if we can't even grow the foundation? The quiet quit of the Canadian worker is the result of years of being told to do more with less. When the reward for hard work is a higher tax bracket and a more expensive grocery bill, the motivation to innovate or excel dies. This is the dark psychology of demotivation. We are becoming a nation of clock watchers. The visceral pain is the loss of purpose. You used to take pride in your work, but now you just see it as a way to delay the inevitable. This stagnation is Canada's greatest threat. In a global crisis, the nations that survive are the ones with a motivated, innovative workforce. Canada, instead, is mired in red tape and a culture of good enough. We have the lowest business investment in the G7. Our companies aren't buying new equipment or developing new tech. They are just trying to survive the next regulatory hurdle. This productivity gap is the shadow fact that will eventually lead to a permanent decline in our standard of living. We are coasting on the momentum of our grandfathers' achievements, but the fuel is running out. The middle class isn't just disappearing, it's giving up. If we don't find a reason to strive again, what will be left of the true North strong and free? Debt is the new Canadian religion, and the credit card is our altar. We have been sold the lie that lifestyle can be purchased on a 21% interest rate. The visceral pain is the statement day, that moment of dread when you open the app and see the balance that never seems to move, despite your payments. The dark psychology here is normalization. We've made carrying $20,000 in consumer debt seem like a normal part of being Canadian. We use credit to bridge the gap between our stagnant wages and the rising cost of living, not realizing we are digging a hole we can never climb out of. This debt is the anchor that will pull Canada down in a global crisis. When the world economy shudders and jobs are lost, this debt doesn't go away, it compounds. We are a nation of debt slaves, bound to our jobs not by loyalty, but by the fear of the collection agency. The shadow fact is that the Canadian economy is now a giant debt servicing machine. A huge portion of our economic activity is just moving interest from one pocket to another. We aren't creating wealth, we are just managing our poverty. Are you using your credit card, or is it using you to keep a dying system on life support? The geopolitical vulnerability of Canada is often ignored because we assume our big brother to the south will always protect us. But the US is turning inward. The America First sentiment isn't a fad, it's a structural shift. If a global crisis leads to a trade war or a breakdown in the US-Canada relationship, we are defenseless. Our economy is essentially a tail on the American dog. When the dog shakes, we fly off. The visceral pain here is the loss of sovereignty. We don't control our own interest rates, we follow the Fed. We don't control our own security, we rely on NORAD. The dark psychology is the illusion of independence. We talk a big game on the world stage, but we are a middle power with a hollowed-out military and a fragile trade dependency. The shadow fact is that if the US decides to tax Canadian energy or auto parts, our economy collapses overnight. We have no plan B. We have ignored our other global partners and failed to diversify our exports. We are all in on a single relationship that is becoming increasingly volatile. In a world of giants, Canada is a polite bystander with a very large target on its back. Is our friendship with the US a shield or a dependency that will eventually break us? The Great Wealth Transfer is often cited as the light at the end of the tunnel for millennials, the idea that the boomer generation will pass down trillions in real estate and savings. But here is the shadow fact. That wealth is being liquidated before it ever reaches the next generation. It's being eaten by the astronomical costs of private long-term care, healthcare gaps, and the reverse mortgage industry. The banks have found a way to reclaim the equity in those suburban homes before the children can inherit them. The emotional gain is the realization that the safety net of family inheritance is an illusion for many. The dark psychology is false hope. We are told to wait our turn, but by the time our turn comes, the plate will be empty. This is the final blow to the middle class, the destruction of intergenerational wealth. Instead of building on the success of our parents, we are starting from zero, or worse, from debt. This creates a society of permanent beginners. We never get the chance to build real capital. A global crisis will only accelerate this liquidation. As the cost of living for seniors spikes, the inheritance vanishes into the coffers of the healthcare conglomerates. What happens to a society that can no longer pass its success to its children? The shadow fact, part 2, the currency devaluation. While you focus on the price of goods going up, you aren't seeing the value of the loonie going down. Canada has printed more money in the last 4 years than in the previous 40. This debasement of our currency is a hidden tax on every dollar you own. The visceral pain is the vanishing holiday, realizing that your Canadian dollar buys nothing in the US or Europe anymore. We are becoming a low purchasing power nation. The dark psychology is slow boil. If the currency crashed 20% in a day, there would be riots. But if it loses 2% a year for a decade, people just complain about the price of lettuce. This is a deliberate strategy to inflate away the massive government debt. They are paying back their loans with cheaper dollars, and those dollars are coming out of your pocket. In a global crisis, the flight to quality usually means people buy USD or gold. Nobody rushes to buy CAD. We are a petrocurrency without the pipelines to back it up. If the world moved away from our resources, our dollar becomes a northern peso. This is the ultimate trap for the Canadian middle class. Your savings are in a currency that is being sacrificed to save a government that can't stop spending. We are entering a two-tiered society. On one side, the asset-rich, who own the land, the stocks, and the resources. On the other, the service class, who work for them, rent from them, and pay interest to them. The middle class was the bridge between these two worlds, and that bridge is collapsing. The emotional pain is a loss of belonging. You feel like a stranger in the country your family helped build. The dark psychology is social fragmentation. When the middle class disappears, the social contract breaks. People stop caring about the common good and start focusing on tribal survival. This is how a global crisis pushes Canada down, not just economically, but socially. We lose the politeness we are famous for and replace it with a desperate, sharp-edged competition for the remaining scraps. The curiosity gap we started with, the shadow fact no one talks about, is that this decline is not a mistake, it's a mathematical certainty of our current path. We have prioritized growth through debt and immigration over stability through productivity and savings. The result is a nation that is wide but thin. One good shake from the global stage, and the whole structure could fold. Are you prepared to be on the right side of the divide, or will you fall with the bridge? The survival blueprint is the only way out, and it starts with rejecting the psychology of the average Canadian. If you do what everyone else is doing, you will end up where everyone else is, broke, stressed, and dependent. To survive the coming global shift, you must diversify out of the CAD, reduce your reliance on the Canadian housing market, and invest in hard skills that have value regardless of the currency. The visceral feeling of getting ahead only comes when you stop playing their game. This is the final open loop. The system is designed to keep you in the middle, but the middle no longer exists. You must choose a side. This video wasn't meant to scare you, but to wake you up to the visceral reality of our shadow economy. The global crisis is a catalyst, not the cause. The cause is our own complacency. But knowledge is the first step towards resilience. Protect your TFSA with assets that beat inflation. Use your RRSP to hedge against the CRA. And most importantly, stop believing the lie that everything will be fine just because we are Canadian.